let's talk about what's happening with the Jordan Neely case first. Daniel Penny is the defendant. Jordan Neely is the man who died. It appears the jury's hung on the most serious charge, which is whether he recklessly caused the death of Jordan Neely. The second charge is whether he was criminally negligent in causing Jordan Neely's death. Or they could, of course, acquit him entirely of these charges because he was clearly a good Samaritan trying to protect the passengers on that subway car where this altercation took place. Just a quick refresher for those who don't remember. Jordan Neely came onto the subway train. He was acting irrationally. He was saying he didn't care if he died or went to prison. He was threatening passengers. Passengers were scared. And Daniel Penny got up and got him in a headlock and subdued him and the crazy behavior. And ultimately, Jordan Neely died because, well, he didn't have enough oxygen, but he also had some other health problems that were introduced at trial as potentially contributing or indeed possibly the cause. So I think a lot of us believed that this jury was going to come back like that with an acquittal. No, we're now on, I think, day 4 of deliberations. And just before we came to air, the jury had sent a note into the judge saying, we can't agree on the first charge, the most serious charge. Now, that doesn't necessarily tell us whether they're in agreement on the criminally negligent homicide charge. I don't know how the jury instructions read. You know, normally they'll say, did he recklessly cause the death of this person? If yes, you know, move on to number 2. I don't know what the direction was. Like, did they have to start with number 1? Could they have started with number 2? Whatever. I assume number 2 should be easier for them because they're only saying they're deadlocked on number 1. And so they went into court and said to the judge, we're deadlocked. And the judge asked the lawyers, what should the instruction be, which is normal. And the defense said, it's a mistrial, which was a nice try, but yeah, probably not. And the prosecution said, tell him to go back in and continue deliberating. And it looks like that's what the judge has done. There's been like update after update when we've been on the air. Let me just give you the latest. Okay. The judge said he thinks the jury could move on to consider count 2, criminally negligent homicide, even if they're deadlocked on count 1. He asks the DA's brain trust to work on it. The reporting here is still in the courtroom wondering how fast the jury will come back. This is from Matthew Russell at Inner City Publication. The judge, we got the next note. So the jury, he sent them back in to continue deliberating. Then they sent out a note almost immediately thereafter saying, we, the jury, request further clarification on whether a person reasonably believes force is necessary. We would like more on what is a reasonable person. They're obviously divided. The judge responded, there's a passage in People versus Gates or Goats, and then he chuckles because he realizes people, I don't know why he chuckled, in which they note that reasonableness must be based on circumstances. Oh my God. So clarifying. The judge says, bring them back out. The jury's entering. The judge says to the jury, reasonableness is up to you to decide. What would a reasonable person do in this situation? He must have honestly believed that Jordan Neely was going to use physical force against him or someone else. And now the jury's getting lunch and we'll come back. I'd be very worried if I were the defense right now.
So I am obsessed with this case. I have been following it extremely closely. I get the trial transcripts every day. I am pulling for Daniel Penny so hard. Now, what is salient here is that Jordan Neely was out of his mind on K2, a powerful synthetic drug that they can't even quantify how much was in his bloodstream. The ME testified that she was pressured to classify this death a homicide basically before she had finished the autopsy. This is just like George Floyd. This is, and again, like anyone who hasn't seen The Fall of Minneapolis, do it. Avail yourself, because it is such a, it puts in perspective just how much the media lies to us. My sister-in-law is the court reporter on this case, and she is convinced that part of the problem the jury is having coming to a verdict is because there are protesters outside that courthouse every day screaming that Daniel Penny is a racist, that this was a lynching. Daniel Penny took him down. He definitively, the defense did an expert job at this, medically did not cause him to die of a chokehold. That is not what killed Jordan Neely. It was the drugs. It was the state he was worked up in. And it was a sickling disease that he had. All three of these things combined to cause his death. He tried to get up at 3 minutes and 19 seconds into this chokehold. He moved with such force. Penny's underneath Neely on the subway floor. He exerted himself with so much force that he lifted Penny, a 6'1" former Marine, off of the floor. A personal anecdote about this. My brother is an interesting guy. He works in sanitation in New York. And his job is such that he has to deal with the CEOs of like multi-billion-dollar companies, like MLB, top hospitals, you name it. And he also has to deal with his workforce, which is composed primarily of ex-felons. He will routinely say, the jobs I offer are the only ones in America where you can earn six figures and be illiterate. A guy comes into his office and says, your driver out there is in the parking lot going crazy out of his mind on PCP. 26-year-old kid, not super strong, not super tall. Cops come. It took 12 cops to get this guy down to the ground. 12 and half an hour. And my brother Bill said, this is the thing. When you take down a guy like that fueled by that kind of drug that gives you superhuman power, you cannot let them back up. They will kill you. They will kill you. And this is stuff that I think the average person sitting at home has no knowledge of. I read the testimony of the passengers on that train, a host of races, ethnicities, socioeconomic status, teenage girl, a senior brand manager at Nike, all daily subway riders said they were sure they were going to die that day. That Jordan Neely was that terrifying. So I think this is an easy acquittal, but this is a case that is fueled not by justice. It's Alvin Bragg. It's been racialized. If this were black on black, white on white, Daniel Penny wouldn't be here.
Wouldn't have happened. This prosecutor's got a history of it, of giving preferential treatment to so-called marginalized criminals. Here she is bragging about it in SOT 6.
I had a murder case where the defendant did not intentionally kill the victim. He went into an ATM on the Upper West Side and tried to rob an individual. Unfortunately, it was an older individual. He was 86. And in the course of the robbery, he fell to the ground, and as a result, he died. This is, under the law, a felony murder, which is akin to intentional murder. However, when I first got the case, I learned, I took the time to learn about the defendant. And it was a strong case, so it wasn't about a whodunit. I knew immediately who did it. I could prove it. I could take it to trial that day and win it. But it wasn't about that. It was that the more I learned about the defendant and his life and the circumstances, the kinds of things that Jarrell was talking about, that one should take into account the trauma of that individual, I really felt incredibly sorry for him that he had gotten to that point in his life where he felt like there was no other choice but to commit this robbery.
Felt super sympathetic towards
What's
this guy.
missing in that account? The victim was an 87-year-old Asian man, a beloved college professor, survivor of the Korean War. The perp, the guy who killed him, that passive language kills me. He fell as a result of the fall. He died. He was murdered for $300 he took out of an ATM by a middle-aged black man. She had the gall to go to the victim's family and say, are you interested in a little premise called restorative justice?
Oh, my God.
Restorative justice. So this guy gets, I think he got maybe 10 years. He probably would have gotten life. So she's perfectly willing to extend that kind of sympathy and do that kind of background check when it's, I suppose, a black person committing a crime. But Daniel Penny, who, I swear to God, Megyn, the first responders didn't want to touch Jordan Neely.
Right. They wouldn't give him CPR.
No.
Because they didn't want to put their mouths on his.
He was so filthy. He reeked. He was obviously diseased. The responding officer said, my guys aren't getting Hep C over this.
Right.
That's what he said.
Who could blame them?
Daniel Penny put his hands on him. Daniel Penny held him down. Daniel Penny endured that stink and that risk of disease to protect his fellow passengers. And the real after effect of this case is going to be, who on earth would ever get in between innocent people and a threat like that again?
No way. No one. If this guy goes down on any one of these charges, criminally negligent or reckless, no one will.
But even the fact that this has gone to trial, I think, would cause most people to think twice.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Why would you risk losing everything, going bankrupt, losing any shot at another job, reputationally smeared? There are subway cars that are now outfitted where normally ads would be. White type against a black background. This car is where someone was lynched.
Oh, my Lord. Seriously? Mm-hmm. I haven't been on the New York City subways in a while.
I saw it online. I was on the subway last week, but I saw it and I thought, of course. And where is the mayor who has said pretty much this case should not be happening?
He seems to be on Daniel Penny's side, but a lot of good that does him.
Yeah,
exactly.
Get those things down.
A lot of good that does him. They just a bit of info on what the jury has been saying. They wanted, in the course of the deliberations, we've gotten some clues into what we seem to be seeing today, which is they are considering a guilty verdict. It is not that simple for them. They wanted first a definition of recklessness and a definition of negligence. And just to reiterate, to convict Penny of manslaughter, they have to convince the jury that he acted recklessly, that he grossly deviated from how a reasonable person would behave. You know how much my family and I love our dogs, right? Even Strudwick, cannot imagine life without them. Usually don't imagine life without them. They have a great life, but some dogs are not so lucky. This is why I'm super glad to tell you about Delta Rescue, the largest no-kill, care-for-life animal sanctuary in the world. They have rescued thousands of dogs, plus cats and horses too. And they provide all the animals with shelter, safety, and most of all, love. They've been doing it now for more than 45 years. Delta Rescue relies solely on contributions to stay open, and giving can bring tax benefits to you too. Speak with your estate planner about how you can grow your estate while helping animals in need. And check out the estate planning tab on their website to learn more. We love our Thunder and Strudwick, but would like other dogs who need love to find it too. Visit deltarescue.org today to learn more. That's deltarescue.org. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.